You know, you're like a lot of other citizens in this town and everywhere. You haven't taken the trouble to inform yourself about how democratic government operates.
What's that got to do with it?
The way is wide open for citizens to get what they want from their government.
All we want is a place to play.
It's a good thing you want. Good for you and good for the community. So I think we can get it for you.
You can?
I said we can, if we're willing to work for it.
I'll work for it. What do I do? See this petition? We have to get signatures so they can hold a referendum at the next town election.
Gee, that's great.
Therefore, be it resolved that this organization go on record as favoring the proposal.
You will vote on our side, won't you, Mrs. Stein?
Why, yes, I will.
Well, what I don't understand is why you're going to all this trouble. Why should you worry?
You might say that I'm just a busybody with nothing better to do than work for the good of our community.
Mr. Heineman knew how to go about it and went to work to help them get it. That's what it means to keep informed on public affairs and be a good neighbor. So it's really not surprising after all that Mr. Heineman was named first citizen of the town. He meets every test of good citizenship as outlined in the checklist. How about you? Are you a good citizen?
You see, Jim, citizenship carries with it many rights and many duties. The rights follow the duties and are dependent upon them. Don't be a part-time citizen thinking only of your rights. If you neglect your duty, you may forfeit your right. Think it over.
You know what? We spend a lot of time framing the issues so that you move beyond just complaining towards something that is...
To do something about it?
To do something about it, which is exactly the topic for tonight.
The thing is, you know, I can have all the concerns in the world and I'm bringing them up to the council, but the council needs to do something about it. I can't go out there and do it.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. You know, so when we have a concern, like you have a concern with speeding, okay, that's a matter of consideration. Okay, so you bring that to the attention of council. Hey, there are people speeding. People are going to get hurt, you know, because of this, right? So then the next step is this issue. Okay, so what do they do about it, right? What do you want them to do about it? So this becomes the issue. Now, issues are always things that need to be solved, problems to be solved. And so what happens is, so when you say, hey, there's a speeding problem on High Street, something needs to be done about it, okay? So when you come back month after month and that issue is no one's doing anything about your problem, your issue, right. And this is where it becomes a crisis, right? This is a crisis because in terms of public safety, right, people will get hurt. So it becomes a crisis. And it's at this point right here that all citizens need to recognize if our concerns, we brought our concerns and we've asked for something to be done about it and nothing is getting done about it, we're at a crisis moment. And so the next step is for us to take action in some way, some form, some fashion, right? We have to move beyond the crisis, right? And that's what I think people really need to understand is that, you know, like your issue on High Street, to me is a crisis, right? Cars are speeding.
Right, because they're not doing anything about it.
They're not doing anything about it. So we have a crisis, or another way you could think of this as an impasse or loggerhead or whatever. I like the term crisis because I think it really says what is really going on, and that's inaction, right? Nothing is getting done. So this is inaction. So all crises are really about inaction, I think, from citizens' points of view, right? So what we want to do then is we want action. We want something to be done, right? Now, here's where it gets, this is where most people failed to go beyond this step, right? And so to go beyond this step, right, this is where people have to exert their power, because what's it going to take, right? You showing up at another council meeting, it's going to take for some kid to get hurt, run over.
Exactly.
Right? What's it going to take for citizens to get their elected officials to stop the inactivity and move towards action on the issues, right? So that's where it's about power. And I think this is really about force. It's how do we force our elected officials into action? Now, this is a lot of people shy away from this term, this point here, but really it's it is what it is. We have to force our elected officials who will not act in our interests, right? So
can I ask you this?
Yeah.
I mean, all these people on council, who is responsible for the road? Is that Wendy, or is it everybody in general on that council?
Well, that's a great question, because I think you could start with the general assumption that everybody who's on council is a steward of this borough. Right?
Okay.
Everybody who's on council has a responsibility for the safety and well-being of every road, right? Every sewer pipe, every road, all that stuff. They have fiduciary responsibilities, make sure the budget is handled, money's being paid, bills are being paid, right down to this, this thing about the safety on the street. Now you narrow it down a little bit. Now there is a streets committee, and that streets committee is 3 people. It's Wendy Harker, who's the chair. It is Eli Kasanovich, and it is Bill Heaton.
Okay.
Those 3 council members are on the streets committee. So if you want to say specifically, of you people sitting there in council, who is the closest to solving this problem, or most empowered or most directed to solve this power, that's those 3 people right there.
And you know what? Not the last meeting, because Michelle wasn't there. It was the meeting before, I believe. She mentioned something about speed bumps up here. Okay, well, she wasn't there last week or last time to mention it. I was a little bit pissed off at Lou. I felt like I was being brushed off. And I have not yet seen, I was seeing cops up here daily, sitting, watching, probably not finding anything because they said it the wrong time of the day. Mm-hmm. But ever since last month's council meeting, I have not seen a police officer up here. Not saying they haven't come while I was at work, but that's not when the people are speeding. And I tried to tell them that.
Yeah, and when you consider that pretty much the only response that council gave you at that meeting was to call the police.
Yeah, that.
So so the police are sitting there. So the police are aware of the problem. Where were the police? I don't know. Right. So we're right back to this. It's almost like we're on a treadmill, right?
Seriously, they'll probably think I'm dumb and stupid for calling the police because I got somebody speeding. You saw the Facebook conversation with the guy in the blue Jeep that Kimmy Kimmel took a picture of.
Sure.
He's been doing that for a year because he was doing it when they were building my deck, because everybody built my deck saying, does he always go that fast down the road? I said, yes, he does.
Yeah. Well, we're right back to that, the point of like, well, what is it going to take to solve the problem? So obviously it's not a police issue. It's when you call the police, well, they're long gone, right? Speeders are long gone. You give someone, hey, this blue vehicle, this red vehicle, whatever, you turn that over to the police. But what's the deal, right? So the person who comes along in a green vehicle will speed, right? So,
yeah.
So to get back to this equation here, right? Citizens have to empower themselves to break this logjam, right? And so one of the ways that we can do this is through persuasion. We could stand up and say to the council, hey, look, if you don't do something, someone's going to get killed. This is dangerous, right? It doesn't seem like they're being persuaded towards action. Right?
Or else they need to come up here and see how they drive on this road. Sit across in the parking lot. I'm going to tell them that.
Yeah.
The three of you that are on the street committee, come up here and sit. because you don't live up here, so you don't care.
Right. Well, so there you go. So persuasion is one thing. You make your case, and then there's petition and public pressure, and that can take a lot of different forms. And one of those forms is, when you petition, you gather your neighbors on that street, and you could literally do a petition, right, where everyone signs, hey, we want you to do something about this street. All of us residents on High Street, right? That's a petition. You can give that petition to council. You can, and that is a form of public pressure, right? You can organize your neighbors to come to the meeting, right? So you have not just you, but you have 10 people there, right? So petitioning and public pressure is a way to put the heat on, right? Because if persuasion doesn't work, you got to put the public heat on. Well, if nothing happens then, what about the next steps?
Legal action.
Legal action and political action, right? So legal action could be very well, you've documented all of your stuff. It's in the minutes. You've explained the situation over and over again for months and months and months. You've documented speeders. Council's doing nothing about it. Police aren't able to do anything about it. And then you can come, but you know that there are things to do, right? And those things that can be done are traffic calming devices, like a speed hump.
Right.
Or a chicane, right? I was up there the other day and I drove down that street and I sort of pretended to myself, if there was a chicane built there where you're forced to do an S, right? I tell you, that slowed me down considerably. I had to slow down to make a little S turn. Now, where do you put those bump outs in a roadway? I don't know. That's something to be solved. That's something to think through, right? But if that issue is grave enough where it's not being addressed, right, then legal action, filing a petition with the district court, saying, hey, we the citizens here are not getting any action here. We're going to bring the borough to court to force some sort of action, right?
Right.
Now I always call that the nuclear option, right? Because that's a big to-do. You want that to be the last resort, really. And I really should have put it last here on the list. But political action, quite frankly, is you remove those people from office. And we're at a great time right now. Time right now with November election to look at the people who have not been serving this issue very well, who have been inactive, refusing to take action. And then we could ask our candidates for office, what will you do about this? What action will you take? Right? And then depending on that answer, of course, then we take that political action come November.
Right.
Right. So these are the things that that the levers of power, if you will, that we can use.
Someone else is on? Oh, yeah, there's a couple.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, she's unmuted now.
Jeez.
And we have someone else who joined us. I don't know who owner is, but so there are four of us on here now. So the essentials here, we're talking about the essentials of citizens' power. And one of those things, and you just really have to wrap your head around this. This cannot be underestimated. The ability to educate not only our elected officials, but citizens as to these issues, right? So we know that there has been a lot of wrong-headed information going around about, for example, speed humps. People on council referred to them as speed bumps for a long time. And they said, you can't do it. You can't put speed bumps on the road. Well, that's true. You cannot put a speed bump on the road, but you can put a speed hump. That's a very different thing. Right. So they just put a speed hump was just placed on Rock Avenue. And Chrissy Barkfeld has sent me some video that shows people have slowed down considerably. So any issue, right? If we're going to really dive into an issue, what's going to solve an issue, right? That often entails a bit of education about that issue. But the point about education is, and if you think about this, perhaps you know this, lobbyists will often educate lawmakers, in Harrisburg or Washington as to any given issues, because what congressman is a expert in the petrochemical industry, for example, right? So lobbyists go and they educate elected officials, and they will often go as far as to write legislation for those officials so that the official can say, okay, well, here's a starting point towards a bill that could become a law, right? So that form of education might be something that we really need on High Street, for example, to bring that to our council members, just like we did on Rock Avenue. Double stop sign, right? Double stop signs, stop bars, a center line down that road, now a speed hump. All that was a learning process by council before they would take action. And believe me, before that, they did not do it because they said, well, you can't put a speed hump, but you can't put a speed bump. Correct. You could put a speed hump. Okay. You can't put a double stop sign. We were told that you cannot put a double stop sign there because somebody at PennDOT said it can't be done. Well, I challenged that. Maybe you were at that meeting. I don't know. I challenged that, and I said, well, geez, tell me who that person you spoke to is, because I'd like to know. I'd like to educate myself. Why you can't put a double stop sign, a left-hand stop sign in particular, right? Well, the very next day, they were measuring the area for a double stop sign. So it behooves us as citizens to take the step to educate our council members, our elected officials, on these issues themselves, right? So that's the first part here. Agitate, that's a little bit self-explanatory, right? As being that burr in the saddle, coming to meetings, bringing your neighbors, signing petitions, getting loud if you have to. Get loud. That's just the agitation part of it, right? It gets people's attention. The worst problem that we have, I think, in local government is the dismissal of citizens' concerns. And that comes with, the phrase that we often hear in our council meetings? So when a citizen brings a concern to the council, what do they say in response? We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. We'll look into it.
We'll look into it.
And then people come back the second month, the third month, the fourth month.
We'll look into it.
You're right. So, so quite frankly, we citizens, we allow that to take place. We permit dysfunctional behavior when we don't stand up and we say, hey, what's going on here? What the heck are you doing? You guys need to get your butts in gear here and address this issue because, in your case, it's a safety issue.
Right.
So this is a form of agitation. You agitate the heck out of your elected officials. You agitate your neighbors. Come on, don't you want to see this problem solved? Come to the meeting tonight. Sign this petition, right? Yada, yada. Okay. And then, of course, the third essential of citizen power is to motivate the change, because if we don't motivate anybody to take action, we are never going to get there. Right. So the education part, the agitation part is really leads towards this idea of motivating change, right? Motivating action on an issue. That is essential. But let me ask you all, because I do way too much talking in these activities. I want to ask you why you think it's so darn difficult to get things done in this borough, for citizens to get things done. Why do you think it's so difficult? Alicia?
Me, I think it's difficult because I think there may be an intimidation factor involved. I know that was a lot with me. I was very intimidated by this council.
Oh. So do you think citizens are generally intimidated?
I think some are.
Yeah.
And then now I see a lot of them are very strong and stand up for what they think is right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like to think it takes a bit of courage to step up into the role of a citizen who has something to say, who wants to say it, who wants people to hear that. It just plainly takes a bit of courage to stand up. One of the greatest fears is public speaking that people have. So, you'll have to be a public speaker when you stand up and you give your name to the council secretary, your address, and then state your concern about something.
Yeah.
Any other reasons you think people feel like nothing can get done?
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel, well, for one, why does the fire department have so much power on that board that they seem to gridlock everything? So then it seems an effort in futility to even bring something up.
Yeah. I think people feel that the power structure on council is sort of a foregone conclusion.
Right. And why do they have so much power?
Yeah. Well, if you go back to just the basic principle of democracy, we have 7 people on council, majority votes, the majority wins in a vote, whether that's 4 out of the 7, or if you have 6 people, right, it's 5 out of the 6. If you have 4 people, of course, 4 is the quorum. So if you have 3 out of the 1 person who shows up, then you have 3 people who prevail over that. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think some people think the power imbalance is too much. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people say, well, why bother?
Yes,
why
true.
bother?
And since it is like a block, it's almost like it's a block vote. Like, do they have the agenda prior to going in and they already decide that if somebody brings this up, we're going no, or they just get involved in so much outside discussion that, as you said, there's no Robert's rules that, hey, this is on the table. You can't be talking about next week's bingo or what you did last Tuesday after work. Or this is on the table. This needs to be handled before you go off. Do your personal discussion after the meeting.
Right. So when people come to a meeting and they see this dysfunction, they see this stuff and they hear the people who are there going, what the heck? We're going around and round on this. And why we don't even know where we are on the agenda. This is crazy dysfunction. That's dissuasive, right? Those wooden chairs that we have, as I said at our town hall, those chairs are dissuasive. But any council member at this very next meeting could put a motion on the table to spend X amount of money to replace those chairs. Well, let's see if that happens, right? But it is a real thing. People don't want to get involved with borough stuff because it's messy, it's a pain symbol, it's dysfunction. Who wants to witness a train wreck, right, every month? So why come? Why bother, right? The majority of people will vote the way they want to vote anyways. Yeah, those are dissuasive.
Right. And you don't want to be labeled as the dissident, the person that, the troublemaker.
Yes, but I think we need to change that. We need to take on, citizens need to realize, and at a town hall meeting, I tried to underscore that repeatedly. These are issues that are in our wheelhouse. These are issues of our concern. We have a right to weigh in. Our elected officials may not like it. They may not be used to it. They may put up a fight, a barrier, however you want to put it. But we have a right, citizens have a right to weigh in on these issues. So it takes a bit of assertion, a bit of, I like to say, courage. Before you guys came on, I was making that point to Linda that citizenship takes courage. It just does, to put yourself out there. And, when someone does that alone, that's often way more difficult than if we form a coalition or we form a group. Linda's issue with speeding on High Street, your street, if all of you were on the same page, if all of you were in agreement, something has to be done, we think XYZ should be done, you as a block group comes to council and you basically lobby council for a real solution that perhaps you can lay on the table for them. Because if they can't think out of the box, maybe you have to think out of the box for them, right down to what this might cost. right, to do XYZ traffic calming on the street. So yeah, but it does take a bit of courage, which, quite frankly, it saddens me, but I think a lot of people don't have citizenship courage. They just do not. But any other reasons you think people do not take action, show up, have the courage to engage on the issues?
I think it's just because, as you said previously, it's just that over the years you haven't seen anything getting done, or it's 5 months and you're bringing the same issue, and there's no report back as to like, oh hey, we looked into this, or this is where we are at so far. It might be baby steps, but let us know you've done something.
Yeah.
But we never get any report that, oh, we looked into this, this is what we've done, this is what, this is our next step.
Right. It is a political strategy on the part of politicians to run out the clock on citizens.
And then the person just gives up. They're like, they just throw their hands up in there and say, okay, this is how it's going to be. And yeah.
Well, that is something that we need to consider, right? So, the basic equation here is we have concerns, we have issues, which are the problems around those concerns that we need to have solved. If we recognize that there is inaction around those issues, then we have to recognize that this is a crisis. And then we have to take the steps to work through that crisis. And those steps are power steps. You try to persuade, you try to petition, and you put the pressure on. If you need to, you put the legal pressure on. If you need to, you put the political pressure on in terms of removing people from office. But I want to thank you guys for joining this discussion. This is something that will be going on and on the Concerned Citizens page, right? All about educating, agitating, and motivating citizens' issues to resolve of some sort. So I want to thank you guys for joining, and you can watch this whole thing.
Thanks for doing it, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mayor, for joining.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
A good citizen will perform basic civic duties, take part in group activities, know and obey the law, keep informed on public affairs, be a good neighbor.